Welcome back, friends, to another build/guide video for the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion. Today we're going to be covering healers and healer builds. Now honestly, not too much has really changed with healing prior to what we saw Season 1, Season 2, and even back in 2022 of New World. We do of course have the addition of the brand new weapon though, so there is the Flail and Shield here, which has access to quite a bit of healing shenanigans, and then we also have some reworks to the attribute points as well, including a new bonus at 350 focus, which gives us some ability cooldown when we pop a Heartrune. We also get some extra outgoing healing here as well. We have seen some nerfs happening to healer. The Blessed perk on the Life Staff was nerfed, but as with all of our previous build videos, we're going to be going over the weapon mastery, the attributes, the equip loadout, gems, you name it, all of that good stuff. So let's kick things off with the weapon choice. We're going to do two different builds here. One's for PvE. You can also play it in PvP, and then the other one's going to be mainly PvP orientated, but you could also bring it into PvE as well. One of the big benefits that we've seen with the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion is they've done away with the Resilient Armor perk thing, and they've done away with Corrupted Ward, Angry Earth Ward, Lost Ward, Biscuit Ward. You know, all of those ward perks for like that were sort of separating PvE and PvP, those have been removed. So we do have quite a bit of flexibility now, and we can bring sort of, you know, you can have a one-size-fits-all. But let's start off with the classic healer build, and that is going to be Void Gauntlet and Life Staff. So attributes-wise on this build, we're going to be rocking at least 150 intelligence, 350 focus, and 100 constitution. Now you can sort of flex around with these if you want a little bit. You could drop some more intelligence down to bring up some more constitution. You could drop a little bit of focus to bring up some intelligence if you want the mana on crit hit. But I think this is sort of a good baseline to build off of. And then weapon mastery wise, for the Life Staff, we're rocking all AoE healing. Some people ask me about Splash of Light or Divine Embrace or Light's Embrace. I think Light's Embrace is pretty much only for PvP. It feels like a very PvP sort of heal. Divine Embrace can be good if you're rocking some sort of mages in your team composition, or if you have an archer, they're sort of like single target, you know, you need to target them off to the side. But a lot of the time, and we're probably going to see this meta continue, is you have mainly a melee based group of sort of bruisers. They have great swords, they have spears, they have sword and shields, they have the new flail weapon, so everybody's going to be kind of stacked up. So rocking the sacred ground and then throwing a beacon and an orb on top of it kind of just hits everybody at the same time, and you yourself can even be in the fray there as well, because if we take a look at the Void Gauntlet skill tree, we're going to be running the Void Blade with the idea that we just sort of get in there while we're staying in our heels and just start swinging. Also want to have the Oblivion down as well, but we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's take a look at the weapon mastery. We'll go back to the Life Staff real quick actually. Sacred Ground, you want to be popping this down first because you get the Anointed bonus, which increases the incoming healing by 50%, so all subsequent heals after that 50% higher. Then typically following into an orb and then beacon last. Ideally you want to stick a beacon to a teammate if you can. Beacon is a bit of an interesting one where it actually sticks to objects. It's going to go straight through that NPC, but if we had a player in here, we could stick it to them and then the beacon will sort of keep moving. You can also sometimes attach it to an enemy as well, but if you kill that enemy, it's going to fall off. Orb is there as our sort of reactive heal. It's got a very low cooldown, and it also provides a 20% fortify as well. So 20% damage reduction. Actually, no, it's 20% increase in armor these days with fortify. It's a good one to sort of get out early. Beacon is usually the last heal that goes out. You will notice that we don't have the Divine Blessing. It's not because we don't think it's bad. It's just because of the way that the points sort of divvy up. It's kind of hard to pick it up. So if we just do a sort of respec here, and I'll show you the problem that we usually have. I really like to get all of these passives here. Orb, you have to fully max it out. Beacon, you want to at least take it to here. And then I think Protect the Strength, if you have a buff, which you will do, outgoing healing is increased by 20%. One of you dodge, outgoing healing is increased by 20%. This feels like it's mandatory. Like you can't take away anything on this side of the tree, but then the problem is it only lives with 1 point left, and that's not enough to get Divine Blessing. So you could potentially drop Radiance Blessing to reduce the duration of Beacon in order to get this, but I honestly think that Radiance's Blessing is probably better than Divine Blessing, because if they're below 50%, we already have some ways that we can deal with that, and we'll show that in a little bit. So this is typically going to be the build. I think I actually took Speed of Light, but generally Protector's Touch I think is going to be better here. Moving over to the Void Gauntlet skill tree, Oblivion, it feels like it's a must-have. It's a really good damage boost for your team, gives everybody a 15% damage boost, and it also does damage to the enemies, and if you hit the enemies while they're inside Oblivion, you can weaken them, which makes them do less damage. That's great. Void Blade is basically just our DPS ability. If you do want to play pure healer, you can drop Void Blade and just take these 3 abilities instead, and we'll talk about why we have 4 abilities in a second. Refreshing Rupture or Essence Rupture is an ability that we want to put on a single target whenever we can. This is great in boss fights. It gives everybody 20% lifesteal, basically. It says healing anyone that hits the target for 20% of the damage done, which is pretty bonkers. And then we're also taking Petrifying Scream over here as well. Now, you might be wondering why we taking 4 abilities when we only have 3 on our skill tree. The idea is, typically what I like to do is we rock something like this when we're clearing out big packs of enemies. So when we have a lot of mobs together, just imagine that this trading post is a ton of enemies. We're usually going in, so we'll pop down Sacred Ground, Orb, Beacon, and then we're going to go over, we'll drop an Oblivion, we'll scream at all the enemies, and then we'll go in with the Void Blade. And the Scream has a bunch of different benefits it can bestow upon us. So first of all, it gives us Fortify, which gives us 30% increase in armor. It also roots the enemy in place, so it stops any sort of mages or archers sort of disbanding from the pack. And there is a perk you can get on your weapon or armor called Putrefying Scream, which reduces the enemy healing, and that can be very handy in PvP and also in certain mutations. So there is a nature mutation where enemies start doing a lot of self-healing. I can't remember the name of the mutation, it's for the life of me, but the nature mutation, which you'll frequently see, you know, every couple of weeks it'll rotate in. The enemies do a lot of healing, so Putrefying Scream could be great for that. However, when it comes to a single target boss, when you're doing like a boss fight, you actually want to usually switch out Petrifying Scream for Essence Rupture, because the Scream doesn't really do anything against the boss. You can't root the boss in place, you can't reduce boss's healing most of the time. So I actually like to switch in Essence Rupture for single target fights, and then we quickly switch back over for Scream for AoE fights. But again, like I say, if you're more of a just pure healing aspect, you don't really want to go in for too much damage, you can drop Void Blade and just take Essence Rupture and pick up some upgrades over here. I generally prefer to take the Void Collar Ultimate over the Glimpse of the Void. I feel like this is hard and janky to pull off, and this is just a nice AoE heal which pops every now and again. To quickly recap the attributes, I think 150 intelligence for extra elemental damage is pretty juicy, but you could stop at 100, just damage to light and heavy elemental attacks. This also does benefit, both of these benefit your life staff, by the way. Even though life staff doesn't scale off of intelligence, this is just here to provide extra damage to the Void Gauntlet, and some of these benefits, like I say, the life staff does do nature damage. 350 focus, obviously focus is giving damage to both our life staff and Void Gauntlet, and we want to put as many points into that really as we can, but going above 350 we're going to get diminishing returns, and I like 100 constitution because we get 10% extra max HP, but you might want to consider a little bit more if you just find you're a bit too squishy, especially going to 150 in PvP can be good. Let's take a look at our armor and weapons now for the build. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the artifacts. These are the most exciting parts of the build. So we do have Life Taker here. Now if you guys are interested where to acquire these artifacts, we'll have a quick little guide at the end of this video. Maybe we'll even have a separate video, but we'll cover that later on in the video. Like I say, I don't want to get carried away with it right now. So Life Taker, one of the things that's pretty cool about this is the negative energy perk. So this is the unique relic perk that's only available on Life Taker, and it says your ranged attacks inflict disintegrate for 8 seconds on both weapons with a 1-second cooldown. And then it scales off of dexterity. We don't really care about that, but the disintegrate thing is really awesome. You might be wondering, what the heck is disintegrate? It's actually a passive that you get on the Void Blade attack. So you can see the third paragraph down there. It says both attacks inflict disintegrate on successful hits, dealing 5% weapon damage a second and reducing target's armor by 10% for 8 seconds. Disintegrate stacks up to 3 times. So you can actually get the disintegrate effect because it says it applies to both weapons. You can get disintegrate to apply on your life staff. So we just fire this off here. We'll get that little Ren symbol. So we're actually reducing the armor of a mob just with a life staff attack, which is really crazy because one of the downsides of life staff, obviously it's got access to great healing. It doesn't really have any way to rend or weaken or disease. It doesn't really sort of provide any debuffs. It's just a buffing and healing weapon. But now we can actually make the life staff also a debuffing weapon, which is really, really cool. So that's awesome value. One thing that I think would be good to do with the Life Taker, I haven't done it here because it's expensive, but we can just take the Life Taker to the Gypsum Kiln. I'm gonna have to unequip it from my character here and here. There we go. So if we go to a Gypsum Kiln and then we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can find Life Taker somewhere in here, hopefully. And we can actually change the bottom perk on this. So I think the bottom perk right now is Blessed, but we could change it over to Putrefying Scream. So it has Keen, Life-Stealing, Refreshing Move, and Putrefying Scream. And then, you know, we just have a nice one-size-fits-all. And even if you're not using Scream, it's just you know, like you're not in a situation where you need the anti-healing, just having this sort of always on the Void Gauntlet I feel like is pretty good value. But just bear that in mind. You can change the bottom perk on all relics, and maybe you want to consider changing it from Blessed, I believe it currently is, to Putrefying Scream to get that value there. The life staff that we're rocking has Blessed, Refreshing Move, and Fortifying Sacred Ground. They have introduced a few new perks that are sort of supposed to rival Blessed. So there's one where you do extra healing while you're under 50% mana. There's another one that heals you when you cleanse a debuff, but they both feel kind of situational, whereas just an extra 12% outgoing healing, even though this did get nerfed, it still just feels like it's the better option. So maybe we'll see some changes. And one thing that's worth bearing in mind, we got to this way too late in the video, but we are playing on the test server, by the way. You can see up in the top right, this is the PTR build. So there might be a few changes from now and then the actual live version of the game. This was probably recorded like 2 weeks before the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion actually went live. But as of time of recording, I think Blast, Refreshing Move, Fortifying Sacred Ground is great. Fortifying Sacred Ground gets extra powerful when you put it on the weapon. In fact, any weapon perk when you put it on the weapon is more powerful than in your armor. But I think the extra Fortify from Fortifying Sacred Ground is that's the one that's most worthwhile for me, but you could also put Keen Beacon or Mending Protection on here as well. Moving over to our final relic, we have the Nimble Leather Coat. This is a medium chest that has a highly refreshing, so reduce max cooldowns by 10%, so it's like a double stack of refreshing, and this does stack on top of the other refreshing perk as well, so you can now only stack up to 4 refreshing, so that's 20% cooldown reduction, but you can get another 10%, so we have 30% cooldown reduction just from all of these perks now, which is pretty awesome. It also comes with health, and then the final perk here I changed to be Keen Beacon, which again we can do in the old cheeky gypsum kiln over there. And I should mention, we're in a light equip load, by the way. There has been a bit of discussion as to whether to be in light or medium. I think for this sort of PVE healing build, this build for doing dungeons, the light is so good. It still has a 30% healing bonus, so you can see that second piece of text there. Base damage 20%, outgoing healing plus 30. So if we're in medium, we lose 30% healing, which is pretty significant, you know. So I still think light armor is the way to go. Plus we get access to the dodge roll, which still gives us a lot of escape. So in order to get into the light equip load, we have a light helmet, medium chest, light gloves, light legs, and light boots. The perks in particular that we're rocking here are Elemental Aversion, Health, and Mending Protection. Mending Protection, of course, being the weapon perk. You don't need more than one of these. You can see perk stacks 1 out of 1. Health just feels like a great perk to have. Just having extra health is when it's never bad. And then Elemental Aversion to take a little bit less magical damage can help a lot in mutations and other situations. We already covered our chest piece here, the Nimble Leather Coat. Looking at the gloves, we have Health, Elemental Aversion, and Nullifying Oblivion. This perk isn't always going to be necessary, but when it's good, it's really good. So I felt like, you know, I wanted to have a one-size-fits-all, so I put Nullifying Oblivion in there. As I mentioned, you don't always need it, but it can be really good to strip away buffs from enemies that buff themselves. And the Health and Elemental Aversion there is good for the defense. We've also got Health, Enchanted Ward, and Freedom. I decided to not run a full set of Elemental Aversion. I did switch over to Enchanted Ward for a couple pieces as well. 4% less damage from light and heavy attacks. So if you've got an archer shooting at you, or you're in PvP, I feel like this can be pretty good. And if we get caught in a stun, we can get out the stun a little bit faster with Freedom. So it felt like it was worth slotting at least one of those. And then finally, Health, Refreshing, and Enchanted Ward on the boots. I think any combination of sort of Health, Refreshing, Enchanted Ward, Elemental Aversion, and your weapon perks, that's probably what you typically want to be aiming for as a healer. I think those are like the best sort of armor perks to look at. Obviously, making sure you don't go above 4 stacks of refreshing though. Finally, taking a look at our other jewelry here, we have Health, Refreshing, and Stamina Recovery on our amulet. I actually can't remember where I got this amulet from, but one thing that's worth mentioning is this refreshing perk here, the Stamina Recovery. You probably want to be replacing this with a perk called Protection. So there is a variety of different protections in the game, namely Void Protection, Fire Protection, Frost Protection, Nature Protection. Those are all going to be good in mutated expeditions. You probably want to be collecting, ideally, an amulet for sort of each mutation that you go into. I know this is like going back to the old ways where we needed like a different set of gear for a different sort of fight, but in this case, I think having particular amulets with a corresponding gem that lines up. So for example, if we had sort of Health, Refreshing, and then Void Protection, and then we could also put a gem that also stacks up and gives us more void damage absorption, and you get the idea. So then we would have a Health, Fire Protection, and then you would need a gem that's a ruby, and you put the ruby in the amulet, so you're sort of double stacking up, because this is giving you 6% void damage absorption. The protection perk in your amulet, I think it's at least 10, but they might have buffed it now to be even more. So yeah, collecting those protection amulets probably pretty good, although the most mandatory perk I would say is definitely health there. And then finally, looking at the ring, we do have some new tools to play with on the ring. We have this healing breeze perk, which is pretty bonkers. It says on heal for 6 seconds, you heal the target for 20% weapon damage each second, which is really good. That's like the equivalent heal of like Beacon, but I don't think it scales off of your focus, sadly. It's also got a 10-second cooldown as well, and it can only apply to a single target. So think if you pop like orb into a big pack of enemies, it's going to target whoever's closest to you or whoever's lowest health. I'm not entirely sure how it does it, but I don't believe you can proc the healing breeze effect on like multiple different people at the same time. Sacred, obviously, for the extra outgoing healing is something you want to have. And then ideally, this refreshing perk here would be Hearty instead. So I think the best ring that we can look for as a healer is a Hearty, Sacred, and Healing Breeze, but that we would have to craft that one. But yeah, that Healing Breeze and Sacred feels like it's really, really good. Out of these two, I would, if you had to only have 2 perks, I would probably have Hearty and Healing Breeze. It's sad to give it the Sacred, but I feel like that perk is really, really nice. You know, it's a huge addition to healers and a little bit of extra healing every 10 seconds. Super good. Lastly, taking a look at our Heartrunes, you have a bunch of different options here. If you want to go more defensive, you can take the Stalwart Heartrune of Stone Form. Gives you a little bit of extra healing, reduces your outgoing damage, but you don't really care about that. So the Mending Form, again, while you're standing in Sacred Ground, does heal you for 50% more. You also get Fortified to increase your armor, and you can't be CC'd, which can help you not get interrupted with healing. But you could also look to replace the Stone Form with one of these Firestorm Heartrunes. So there's one in particular that says Firestorm cleanses all damage over time effects from allies it passes through. This is actually really good. Like, cleansing all dots is really valuable. So from the support aspect, that's good. It's also got Weaken on it, and it does a little bit of damage. Another good support option you can go for is Brutal Heartrune of Grasping Vines, which has Rending Vines and Enfeebling Vines. If you're not familiar with where you get Heartrunes from, I think we're probably going to make a dedicated video on that. That's going to be for people who haven't played the game since the Brimstone Sands expansion, so I call it expansion. It was basically an expansion, but yeah, the Heartrunes, if you don't know what those are, I'll put a video in the description down below, a link up in the top right to recap on those, but for people who have been playing recently, obviously familiar with Heartrunes and how to acquire them. When it comes to gems and consumables, we'll cover those at the end of the video, because I think the gems and consumables are going to be the same across both builds. So speaking of which, let's jump into build number 2, which is very similar, honestly. You can see that nothing has really changed here, other than we now have a Flail in place of the Void Gauntlet. So stats wise, you will want to be changing these up a bit, though. We don't really need any intelligence with a Flail. It doesn't scale off of intelligence, and again, the intelligence doesn't really benefit our healing, and it benefits our life staff DPS very minimally. So we're actually going to go ahead and pop some strength food and just switch this over real quick. So I would be looking to rock 100 constitution. In fact, we're probably going to go to 150 constitution with the Flail, because I think this is more of a PvP oriented thing. We'll get that 350 focus again, and then the remainder of our points can go into strength here, just to give us a little bit of damage with the old Flail. It does scale off of strength and focus, but strength is its primary scaling stat. Looking at the weapon mastery for the Flail skill tree, we have Arcane Vortex, Arcane Eruption, and Arcane Smite, funny enough. So these are all the abilities that do provide healing with the Flail. You can mix things up a little bit if you want. In particular for PvP, I think Barrage is, or Barrage, it's definitely Barrage, can be really good as a movement ability. You could probably switch out Arcane Eruption for Barrage, so you can get a little dash, probably taking it all the way down to the bottom. But just from the raw healing aspect, if you are interested in using the Flail as a healer, these are the abilities that you probably want to pick up, because there's no real healing utility provided over here. There are some perks that benefit from you having a shield, so you might have noticed I have decided to not include a shield here, and that's because I still want to stay in the light equip load. Now, it is worth mentioning that if you take a light chest, and then you go for a round shield, you still can technically be in a light equip load, but I still believe that healers, the vast majority of the time, want to be in a light equip load, because that outgoing healing is so good. Now, if you want to be a bit of a healer damage hybrid, you can go to a medium equip load, and probably one of the best ways to do that would be to wear a full set of medium armor. So looking at a medium helmet, medium chest, medium gloves, medium legs, medium boots, and also a kite shield in particular. I think the Michael kite shield is pretty good for that sort of combination, but yeah, you're gonna have to switch out some of the pieces here. So I'm not going to elaborate too much on this build, because I think it's something that I still want to play around with more, but effectively we're just changing our intelligence over to strength. We're picking up a little bit more constitution, and there is some flexibility with the skill tree. If you want to focus purely on healing, take all the cleric's tree. If you want to do a little bit of PvP and escape, you can have barrage here as well. And lastly, you could also look to rock something like the featherweight jacket, which actually doesn't have any equip weight, so it doesn't really weigh anything at all. And then because of that, we can technically take a kite shield. Do I have a kite shield somewhere? I should do. Just take this one for now. And we still can be in a light equip load as well, because again, this chest doesn't weigh anything. So you could rock like the featherweight jacket, a decent kite shield, and that would put you in light as well. You could go for medium, and if you were going to go medium, it'd be full everything medium with a kite shield. I just basically think we're never running a tower shield. It's always going to be a kite shield here, or a round shield with everything else light as well. But I think I do want to make a dedicated video for this sort of paladin healing build, so if you're interested in that one, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe, and all of that stuff. But let's talk quickly about our ability rotation as well, because we didn't really cover that too much in detail with either of these builds. So effectively, this is a build that's designed in both aspects with both the Void Gauntlet and the Flail, where you have a whole melee team composition. So let's imagine this is just our team here, and they're fighting the boss. This is the boss right here. Just imagine there's a boss. So you're putting Sacred Ground on your team, and they're hitting them with an orb, hitting them with a beacon, and then you're just going in with either weapon. So Smite down first for the Flail, followed by the old Spin to win, and the Slappy Do. I still don't know the name of these abilities. Arcane Vortex and Arcane Eruption. If you were playing with the Void Gauntlet, it would be a similar thing, where basically it's Sacred Ground, Orb, and then into Beacon. And then followed by Oblivion, Scream, or Essence Rupture if it's single target, and then we're just swinging in with a Void Blade for a bit, keeping an eye on our cooldowns. As they're about to come off of cooldown, we switch back to the Life Staff and just reapply. One thing that's worth bearing in mind is some fights are very intensive in terms of healing, or you might have aggro of an archer or something. In that case, it's probably best to just stick with the Life Staff and just keep on left-clicking. I think one mistake that you can make when you have this sort of a secondary weapon is to spend too much time with, you know, swinging around like this with the Void Blade and forget that you are, at the end of the day, supposed to be a healer. So make sure you've always got your Sacred Ground down. Make sure you've always got Beacon, Orb, you know, you have like all of your buffs being provided. So Oblivion seems like it's a necessary one to get down. From the Flail skill side, it's the Arcane Smite. You want to make sure you got that down as well. And then anything else after that is kind of surplus. One quick tip that I want to make sure that you're aware of with the Life Staff as well is your basic attacks. Just doing this also heals your teammates. And I think some people like underrate and forget about Blissful Touch, but just simply doing like a left click does provide quite a bit of healing to your team. It also triggers Revitalize, which lowers your cooldown reduction. And again, it also triggers Refreshing Move, which again lowers your cooldown reduction. Typically, before opening with a heal, I like to try and do a dodge roll if I can, because that's going to activate our Bend of Light here, so we get a heal that's 20% stronger. And I'll usually try and land a heavy attack as well, because that will also proc the Intensify, increasing our healing by 10%. If you can get off multiple heavy attacks, go for it, but don't focus too much on trying to stack up Intensify. Just focus on getting that dodge before you drop the heals, and usually open with Sacred or Orb is what I would recommend. Last thing I want to talk about in this video is gems and consumables. The gems that you want to run, right now I've gone with all diamonds, because I feel like one of the main threats that you take as a healer is physical damage. Usually it's somebody with a sword or a little skeleton dude that's trying to hit you, and physical is usually the scariest thing. However, if you are going to jump into a mutated dungeon, for example, if you're thinking about trying to do a mutated dungeon with Eternal means there's a lot of void damage. You can also have Hellfire here, which means there's a lot of fire damage. There's Icebound, I believe that's what it's called. There's a lot of ice damage. And then there's the Nature one, which I just can't remember the name of, but it's also a lot of nature damage. To react to that corresponding elemental damage, the best thing you can do is take the particular type of gems. So once again, we're having Amethyst gems, and we're going to put that in every piece of armor that we can. So don't put these in your weapons, but you can put these in your armor, and every time that you put one in, it'll give you a little bit more void damage resistance. You can see we're at 31.9 right now. We go here, and then we go here, and now we're up to 48% void damage resistance. I believe the cap is 52, so we're doing pretty good here, so maybe we don't need to get that void protection on our amulet. But this is going to help you a lot when it comes to doing particular mutated dungeons. And again, you can imagine these would all be aquamarine gems if it was ice, ruby gems if it was fire, and amber gems if it was nature. On the flip side of things, we have PvP, so if you're playing some Outpost Rush or 3v3 arena, it's kind of hard to know what you're going to go against because different players play different builds, but I feel like Spear and Blunderbuss are going to be the bane of healers typically. I think the new Spear that pulls you in is very scary. There's also Pestilence, which is an absolutely disgusting Blunderbuss, and it's going to be the bane of healers. Both of those weapons do a lot of thrust damage, so One way that you can combat thrust damage, again, is through your gems. There is a type of gem called Emerald, I think is what it's called. And with Emerald gems, they give you thrust damage absorption. So at least chucking in like 2 to 3 emeralds in your armor, I think is going to be a good idea. When it comes to your weapons, diamonds are the healer's best friend as well. I've actually gone for what do you call that? A rune glass diamond here. That it's basically 12% damage and outgoing healing while you're at full health. And then you get this little extra damage on top. But you could just slap in a normal diamond for 15% damage and outgoing healing while you're at full health, and then you just want to try to the best of your ability to be at full health. You, out of everybody on your party, has the best control over who's at full health, so drinking a potion, having a regen potion going, just to make sure that your heals are extra powerful, gonna be the good way to go. And like I say, just diamonds and whatever weapons you can, typically the play. Last thing to talk about is consumables. If you're going to be playing with the Flail, then I think having a little bit of strength food can be good. Alternatively, constitution, going to be good for both builds. And also you have the option to go for some focus food. So this is toss stones. This is the new type of food. You also have banana parfait, banana bread. And then lastly, for intelligence, we have fruit salad. Other consumables that are going to help you out as a healer are Desert Sunrise. This reduces the duration of damage over time effects on you. Energizing Hearty Meal to give you more mana regenerate is good, very, very good. When it comes to PvE, you want to be applying coatings if you can. So if you're going into the Savage Divide, it's mainly beasts, so beast coatings. If you're going into something like Lazarus, then ancient coatings. If you want to know enemy types, we'll link to a resource in the description down below which shows which enemies are in which dungeons. But applying coatings to both your weapons, applying a honing stone to your weapon, even though it doesn't increase your healing, just doing more damage can help out your team. And then you also want to make sure you're rocking ward potions for dungeons as well. So again, in the Savage Divide, mainly beasts, so increasing your damage absorption against beasts by popping that, it's going to be good. And you also want to make sure that you've got health potions, mana potions, and regen potions. Optionally, you could also take an Oak Flesh Bomb for a little bit more physical damage absorption. This is like a short-term buff. 35% extra physical damage absorption, or Gemstone elemental damage absorption can help you out as well. Now, when it comes to obtaining certain artifacts like the Life Taker or Endless Thirst or the Nimble Leather Coat, New World Database is going to be the best way to do this. I think if we tried to showcase every single relic and me farming it is going to add like another 10 minutes to this video, and it's already probably gone long enough. But I will put a link to this resource in the description down below. You can basically go through the list of all of the artifacts in the game and click on them. So if we go and try and find the Nimble Leather Coat, you can see this comes from the PvP rewards track. Now, it does require that you have to be level 100 plus in the PvP rewards track, so that's pretty brutal actually. With that in mind, you could simply just replace this with a normal sort of medium coat, and then you could look to take something like the tumbler shoes that you get from the season pass. This is only at level 20. I think these are also pretty good as well. So you're gonna lose a little bit of cooldown reduction, but I can, understand that a lot of you guys maybe don't want to go 100 levels in the PvP rewards track if you're very PvE oriented. Likewise, the Life Taker Void Gauntlet, which we showcased for the first build, you can click on that, go down to the dropped by section, and it shows it drops from Pugnacious Perutu, who is a big monkey that you can see in the Isle of Zurvan, which is located down in the bottom of the map, all the way down here. I've actually even got him pinged because I was trying to get to him yesterday. So yeah, make sure you check out New World Database to find out where you can get the artifacts from. If you guys enjoyed this video, you want to see more of this sort of stuff, go ahead and click the subscribe button. We're going to have a lot more build guides and information coming out about the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion. Also consider leaving a like on this video as well if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.